Distinguished leaders, friends from across the continents, I stand before you today not only as the President of Burkina Faso, but as the voice of millions of African people far too familiar with imposition, exploitation, and the contempt of those who call themselves the protectors. I am not here to seek sympathy. We do not need pity. What we demand is respect. We have had gold, cotton, cocoa, uranium, yet we remain poor, not because we do not work hard, but because the fruits of our labor are taken from us the moment they are created. Imperialism no longer arrives on battleships with cannons, as it did in centuries past. Today, it comes through unfair trade agreements, crippling debts, and political conditions disguised under the label of development aid. I ask you, how many more generations must we live in the shadow of others? How many more times must we sign documents we know will harm our nations simply because refusing means punishment? Burkina Faso says today, enough, we will no longer accept any form of colonialism. No matter if it wears the mask of civilization or humanitarian aid. And I say to the world, we are ready to cooperate, but only on the principle of equality. We respect those who respect us. We will shake hands with those who truly see us as partners, not as a new kind of colony. This is not just Burkina Faso's fight. This is the fight of every nation that wants to own its future. Today, I call for an alliance of free nations, unbound, unafraid, so that together we can rewrite the rules, not the rules of the powerful, but the rules of fairness. If we do not act today, our children will ask us, why did you know the truth, and still remain silent? I will not be silent.
Applause slowly began to spread through the hall. Some delegates stood, others remained seated, their eyes still fixed on the young soldier's figure as he stepped away from the podium. The words, "I will not be silent," seemed to linger in the air, like a direct challenge to the powers listening in the room. This was more than a speech. It was a strategic declaration, a political statement, and a rallying call for an entire movement. But what led Ibrahim Traoré to this moment, and why did his words command the attention of the entire hall? To understand the weight behind every sentence, we need to go back to the history of Burkina Faso, a small West African nation carrying a long story of resistance against the pressure of great powers. That story begins more than half a century ago. Burkina Faso, a small landlocked nation in West Africa, was once known as Upper Volta under French colonial rule. By the late 19th century, the tricolor flag flew over every plantation, every gold mine, and every cotton field. People were forced to grow cash crops for export rather than crops to feed themselves. Economic dependency was engineered so deeply that even after independence in 1960, the country still relied heavily on importing food and basic goods from its former colonial masters. It wasn't just the economy, politics bore the same scars. Leaders who sought to break away from Western influence often faced diplomatic pressure, the threat of aid cuts, or worse, coups. In the 1980s, the name Thomas Sankara ignited the anti-imperialist flame, but that flame was extinguished after just 4 years by a bullet and a power shift. Ibrahim Traoré grew up in this climate. He witnessed foreign companies exploiting gold mines while rural communities sank deeper into poverty. He saw unfair trade deals that forced Burkina Faso to export raw materials cheaply, only to buy back processed goods at many times the price. And he understood that modern imperialism doesn't need armies to occupy. It uses finance, legal frameworks, and politics to bind nations. These experiences shaped Traoré's political vision. He refused to let Burkina Faso remain a replaceable piece on the global power chessboard. The speech in Moscow was just the visible tip of the iceberg. Behind it lay a long-term strategy to break free from the shadow of imperialism. For over 20 minutes at the forum, Traoré did more than express frustration. He painted a clear vision for the path forward. He stressed that political independence is meaningless without economic independence. Burkina Faso, and Africa as a whole, must be able to extract, process, and trade its own resources. He gave concrete examples. Instead of exporting raw gold ore, the country must build refining plants to create jobs and keep value within its borders. Instead of selling cotton at low prices, Burkina Faso should have textile and garment factories so that when a shirt reaches the global market, the label proudly reads, "Made in Burkina Faso." Traoré also called for a South-South cooperation network between African, Asian, and Latin American nations, where agreements are built on mutual benefit, not the advantage of a single superpower. He emphasized that technology and knowledge should not be monopolized by a few nations, and that fair sharing would allow everyone to progress together. Perhaps the quietest moment in the hall came when he declared, "We must end the belief that someone else will save us. No one will build our future but us." It was not just a statement, it was a challenge, both to the world and to the people of Burkina Faso themselves. As he stepped down from the podium, many delegates approached to shake hands, some already discussing potential new partnerships. But there were also wary, even cold, glances from those who understood that if this idea spread, the balance of global power could change forever. After the speech, many international analysts began dissecting Traoré's message. They realized he wasn't just speaking to the audience in the hall, he was sending an indirect signal to the power capitals of the world. His goal wasn't to stand alone in defiance, but to position Burkina Faso as a new hub for the alliance of self-reliant nations. That strategy begins with diversifying diplomatic relations. Instead of depending on a handful of Western partners, Traoré seeks to expand cooperation with Russia, China, India, Brazil, and neighboring African countries. This not only reduces the risks of political pressure, but also opens opportunities to access new technology, markets, and sources of investment. At the same time, Burkina Faso has taken an active role in mediating regional issues, from border security to trans-Saharan trade. This shift elevates the nation's status, transforming it from a reactive player to a key actor in West Africa's political landscape. Traoré also understands that a nation's image in international media can be just as important as its economic or military strength. That's why he uses every platform, from the African Union to global summits, to project the message of a Burkina Faso that is independent, confident, and ready for equal partnerships. This strategy is not without risks. Some major powers will see it as a direct challenge, but for Traoré, it's the price to pay to break free from dependency and reclaim national sovereignty. Even with a clear strategy, the road ahead for Traoré and Burkina Faso is far from smooth. External pressure is inevitable. The forces that have benefited from the old order will not give up easily. Economic sanctions, smear campaigns in the media, and even attempts to destabilize the political system are all very real possibilities. Inside the country, the challenges are just as serious. Transforming an economy from dependency to self-reliance takes time, resources, and the collective will of the people. Some vested interests will resist change because it threatens their own positions. Others may be skeptical, fearing that change will bring instability. But it is here that the future of the movement will be decided. If Traoré can maintain the trust of the people, harness the spirit of unity, and prove that the new path delivers real results, Burkina Faso will not only stand firm, but could become a source of inspiration for other nations. When the lights in the conference hall go out and the applause fades, one question remains. Is this the beginning of a new chapter in Africa's history? One where smaller nations dare to stand tall before great powers? Or will it be just a rare moment that fades into memory? The answer, as Traoré himself said, will not come from anyone else, but from what the people of Burkina Faso choose to do today. Following Traoré's speech and his new diplomatic strategy, waves of international reactions quickly emerged. In several African nations, especially those seeking to free themselves from the grip of powerful states, his words were praised as a thunderclap awakening. On social media, images and quotes from the speech spread rapidly, shared alongside hashtags calling for African unity. In the West, however, reactions were mixed. Some human rights organizations voiced concerns about Burkina Faso's political direction, warning that partnerships outside the West could lead to restrictions on democracy or personal freedoms. Major news outlets covered the speech while subtly questioning the feasibility of the economic plans Traoré proposed. On the diplomatic front, some European countries began reconsidering aid packages and trade agreements, aiming to pressure Burkina Faso into returning to the old orbit. In contrast, Russia, China, and several South American nations quickly signaled readiness to expand cooperation, seeing this as an opportunity to build a new network of partners outside Western influence. This polarization is not just a matter of policy, it is a battle for influence. For Traoré, each move from the major powers is both a challenge and a test of Burkina Faso's ability to stand firm in a volatile international landscape. The story of Traoré and Burkina Faso is not just for its own people. It is a mirror reflecting a much larger issue that goes beyond Africa's borders. In a world where small nations are often swept along by the tides of great powers, the fact that a young leader dares to openly challenge the old order carries a special significance. The first lesson: political independence must go hand in hand with economic independence. No nation can truly be free if its economy is under someone else's control. This is a reality faced not only by Burkina Faso, but also by many nations in Asia, Latin America, and even small states in Europe. The second lesson: change cannot come from the outside. Every call for unity, every development strategy, only holds value if it is rooted in the belief and will of the people themselves. Traoré knows that without internal consensus, any plan is just ink on paper. Finally, the message to the world is clear. Self-determination is not something granted. It must be seized and defended every single day. Whether you are a nation, a community, or an individual, this truth holds. Looking back, the question is no longer, will Traoré succeed or fail, but rather, will this story inspire others to write their own chapter? And the answer, as with every journey of change, lies in the hands of those willing to take the first step.